welcome to this week's special edition of World of Business. And on this particular episode, I'm joined by the Honorable Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu, who is going to walk us through some of the key highlights that shaped the ministry in the year 2024 and probably what to look forward to in the year 2025. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you once again.
Thank you so much for having us.
Maybe just to kickstart the conversation, can you walk us through some of the key highlights that shaped the events that took place this year, 2024, and maybe what to look forward to in the year 2020?
I must say that the first highlight I can give, of course, is that in March 2024, His Excellency, the President, Dr. Ijim Nangagwa, reassigned me into the Ministry of Industry and Commerce from my previous portfolio of Environment, Climate and Wildlife. And it was at a time when the ministry was already preparing to host the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair. And I'm happy to have joined the team at the time. We worked very hard for what I can call one of the most successful ZITF exhibitions in a long time. We had new programs coming on board, your digital economy, working with the Ministry of ICT, which is promising to be a very big event going forward. But also from the exhibitors' perspective, we reached unprecedented numbers. You know, we went way beyond 100%. Last year, 2023, I think if I'm not mistaken, we had close to 460 people coming here. And this year, it was almost 200 exhibitors, more than that. But more than that, I then had to take time with my team to look at industry. And I must say that the assumption of the SADC chairmanship was a major highlight for Zimbabwe. You would recall that when we last chaired SADC, Zimbabwe drove the SADC industrialization agenda, leading to what was then called SADC Industrialization Strategy and Roadmap. And it was an opportunity again this year when we hosted our SADC Industrialization Week to relive that legacy which Zimbabwe had created. Again, a major highlight in 2024's calendar of events. For the first time, we featured again what we called the investment conference because of its importance in driving industrialization. So again, when we look back, we believe that it was a major highlight. Our State of Industry report highlights that there are so many opportunities within the manufacturing sector, but yet there are so many bottlenecks that need to be addressed. When we discussed with my team, we then saw it fit that we take these issues to Cabinet. And then we proposed to Cabinet that instead of launching a successor industrial development policy, let us focus on these challenges so that when we launch it, first, it is aligned with NDS2, but secondly, we will have wind of these challenges and we are focusing on high growth. So we then came up with a plan for the last quarter of 2024 going to 2025, which we call the Zimbabwe Industrial Reconstruction and Growth Plan. We launched it in Mutare in November, and this is where you are now seeing the efforts of looking at smuggled goods, looking at counterfeit products. It's part of addressing the anomalies that have been picked in our economy.
Speaking of innovation, digitization, and the use of artificial intelligence as key anchors to industrial development, how are you as a ministry going to assist industry going forward? I mean, after the rolling out of the 2025 budget, in terms of innovative means of manufacturing and business in general?
First, it's a whole of government approach. We do have a ministry that is responsible for innovation under the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development. That's why our best bet is really to create the linkage between the private sector and our institutions of higher and tertiary learning so that they tap into each other. The students and academia will be able to understand the industry needs better, while industry needs to be an off-taker or to take up the innovations that are coming from there. But I'm also happy to highlight that we have, as a ministry, assigned our economists to focus more on research, and we will be running some competition for our young economists who will be publishing their research material in peer-reviewed journals. Part of the budget that we have from the Treasury will be going towards financing some of the, not necessarily startups, but those industries that are showing high potential, and certainly the area of innovation will be key among the considerations for one to access this funding.
So speaking at the BRICS Forum, which was held in China this year, you spoke highly of how Zimbabwe is endowed with natural resources, particularly the mineral resources that we have. But you say there was that one huge barrier, the fact that we are not able to export these minerals in their raw form. What would you suggest to be the way forward? Because if you look at it, the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development put forward the mineral beneficiation plan. Is that not working so far?
The reality is that every investor who is coming into the mineral sector is coming here in pursuit of raw materials. And if it were up to them, they would want to extract it as much as possible, send it to their respective homes for value addition and beneficiation. It is up to us as Zimbabweans, when the president says, Nika ino he is counting on you and me, he's counting on industry, on policymakers to say, how are you contributing to the growth of your economy? And we need to be very thorough and deliberate in coming up with policies that guarantee internal value addition of our minerals. Yes, the mineral value addition plan is there and it's beginning to work. There are some investments that are quite capital intensive, especially in the platinum side. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done from regulatory side. We need to look at chrome as a very strategic mineral, which should not be easily exportable in its raw form. We need to really emphasize value addition. We will be working quite closely with the Ministry of Mines, because in any case, when you begin to talk value addition, they are stepping into my territory. So they have to cooperate and collaborate.
Come to the end of the first segment, but do join us again after the break as we continue with the discussion with Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu. Stay tuned. In one of your seminars as a ministry, you mentioned that our local industry has to be fully prepared to participate on the African Continental Free Trade Area. But also, if you look at the manufacturing sector survey that was released by the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industry, stated that some of these industry players are not ready to participate on this continental plate. And some actually cited reasons why they thought our industry wasn't ready to participate. What would you say about this issue? And what do you think readies us as a country to participate on the continental plate?
So firstly, let me acknowledge that either you've done your research or you really do follow the events in this ministry. Thank you for that. The African Continental Free Trade Area should have been operationalized in 2021. and African countries, they commit to something and they start backtracking. We don't think we are ready. Zimbabwe is a very small population, just over 16 million people, and population matters in economics. We need to look beyond our borders if we really are to have sustainable high growth industries. And I don't think we'll get to a day when industry will sit and say we are ready. Competition will push us to get to a point where we are ready. But we don't want to naively expose our industry to unfair competition. That's why what we did when we looked at our reconstruction and growth plan, we addressed the issue of competitiveness quite strongly, the issue of ease and cost of doing business, and we have the Office of the President and Cabinet seized with this because they are the central core where they bring all ministries, departments and agencies who have one license or the other, one regulation or the other to say, let's streamline these. They are contributing to some of the bottlenecks.
Looking at the issue of standards, verification, testing and certification of goods before they reach the market. I mean, you've seen that your ministry has participated a lot in some of these campaigns that are meant to ensure that quality products reach the market and finally the consumer. What efforts is the government putting in place through your ministry to ensure that our products that we are producing as a country are good quality that can qualify for the global market?
So the beauty about this ministry is that it has the responsibility of ensuring that the manufacturing sector grows. It equally has the responsibility of making sure that the consumers are protected. It gives us the extra lenses to appreciate what the consumers expect, at least from the domestic market, and what challenges, if any, the manufacturers have to go through to meet the expectations of the consumer. So this gives you a unique opportunity to then come up with policies that facilitate the manufacturers to meet the expectations of the consumer. For now, on the standards side, it's really largely voluntary. You work with your Standards Association of Zimbabwe, be it your processes, your production systems, they will help you to comply with international standards. And when you do so, and you are exporting your products that are SARS verified, you know that at least there is really some semblance of international standards that will be recognized.
Your ministry is actually chairing a task force on business malpractices, for example, currency manipulation, use of fraudulent scales, and selling underweight counterfeit goods, which you have seen in the market, and most consumers are complaining about this. How far have you got with these splits, and are you going to continue with this campaign in 2025 as well?
Our formal businesses are suffocating under the unfair competition coming from the informal sector. Some goods are smuggled, they are not paying the relevant tariffs. Some we are not even testing for their safety. Some people are putting, certain goods underweight. They say it's 10 kg, yet it's 8.5 kgs. And we felt that now that we appreciate the problems, we need to come up with a solution. The campaign will go on for as long as the need is there. But along the way, we will be fine-tuning to make sure that it becomes business as usual, that people comply.
We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we're going to conclude this discussion. Stay tuned. Welcome to the final segment of this week's special edition of World of Business, and I'm still joined by the Honorable Minister of Industry and Commerce. Honorable, thank you so much for joining us and for staying with us. Before we took a break, we spoke about the importance of selling goods that are standards verified, tested, and certified. And according to the Consumer Protection Act, it is a crime to sell goods or products whose labels and trade descriptions are actually manipulated to mislead the consumer. What more measures are we looking forward to in the year 2025 in as far as ensuring that this particular campaign that you are carrying on as a ministry continues and it's done to its maximum capacity?
Government is obviously concerned when consumer rights, are violated, and we have institutions that we have set up at law to deal with these issues. So we have had enabling legislation, but sometimes implementation has not been up to standard. I must say that we have trade measures within the ministry whose primary responsibility is to make sure that there is fair trade where business comply with certain specifications. If I'm selling a 10 kg packet of potatoes, it has to be 10 kgs, failing which they are liable, and trade measures should be capacitated to be able to do the inspections, to do the measurements. When you take your car to a filling station, that pump which tells you have got 5 liters, how do you know it's 5 liters? Somebody has to assess if that pump is working correctly. So trade measures, that's their primary job, and that's what they do on a daily basis. We were able to rebrand. They now have got their distinguished uniforms. You can tell, you'll think it's the police because they mean business. But also we have capacitated them with vehicles and other tools of trade because of the importance of the role that they are playing in our economy. We also use our Standards Association of Zimbabwe to make sure we continue to highlight issues of quality production, which we know at the end of the day gets the product to the end user in good shape and form.
Honorable Minister, I think we cannot talk about performance of industry without mentioning the retailers themselves. Recently, you received a letter from the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, which was stating that if government does not intervene urgently, we're looking at a situation where the formal retail sector will imminently collapse. And they mentioned, particularly Dr. Denford Mutashu mentioned some of the key challenges that they're facing. For example, the financial burdens, the intermediated money transfer tax, the heavy duties on the retailers. I mean, what's your response to this situation?
For the first time in our history, the Ministry of Industry has signed MOUs with most of our BMOs. Will be signing again as we move, I think, in the first quarter of 2025 with the remaining BMOs. It's a platform where we interact, we exchange ideas. This is really our role, to galvanize the views from across the business sector, and this inform policy. I think it was perhaps out of frustration. Their view was that perhaps the program was not moving fast enough. We conceived the idea of these blitz together with industry. In fact, we are working with the private sector who are helping the task force identify some of the counterfeit products and things like that. It's a fact that the informal sector has grown beyond sustainable levels, and it's growing at the expense of the formal sector. And central to these issues are monetary issues, fiscal issues, which I'm happy to a large extent the budget addresses. And we hope that as we go, we continue to interact more just to make sure that we have enabling policies that encourage the informal sector to formalize. It it is not sustainable to have a situation where being informal appears to be paying more than being formal.
Honorable, like you said, it doesn't have to look like the being informal pays more than being formal. And yet we're looking at a situation whereby the informal sector contributes to the gross domestic product. And this particular sector has been so difficult in terms of taxing them. What's your response to this issue, or what recommendations do you give? Because I think they still have to contribute to the overall fiscus of the country.
What we call informal sector, in the main, should be what we call small to medium enterprises. They are small to medium enterprises, except that they are not doing their businesses formally. And the fact that they are not contributing to the fiscus is an issue that even the Minister of Finance himself is quite concerned with. And we have a program around that of just streamlining the registration processes of our small to medium enterprises, working with our local authorities, and also making sure that we isolate the reserved sectors that are supposed to be reserved for the locals, and we support them in there. I think 2025 will be very different because of how we are going to be approaching them, working closely with the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small to Medium Enterprise Development. They will be, in fact, launching what they are calling the formalization strategy, which is a strategy that will be aimed at assisting these informal sector players to formalize their operations. It will be very expensive to remain informal, and it should be in their interest to formalize their business.
Lastly, your ministry was allocated 550.9 million ZiG following the rolling out of the 2025 national budget. What should we look forward to 2025?
We have accepted that we have to work with what we get. I think our bid was more than 3 billion ZiG, given the work that we would like to do. But this is the wish list, this is our shopping list. We obviously can't get everything. We work within the limits of our Treasury's ability to raise these funds. I'm happy to highlight that there is more than 100 million set aside for direct intervention into industry. And I was discussing today with my team that we need to find a way of creating a sustainable industrial revolving fund where industry can tap into, improve their operations, repay, and that money is availed for others to come and tap into. Efforts have been made before, and we have not been very successful, mainly because when the fund is known to be a government fund, the thinking is that it is free money and they don't see an incentive to repay. We will put enough restrictions around it. In fact, we will crowd in the private sector to make sure that the fund is professionally managed, but it's still affordable, accessible, long-term financing. That's our aim. We will also be capacitating our critical institutions, your CPC, Consumer Protection Commission, your Competition and Tariff Commission, National Competitiveness Commission. We have so many commissions. Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, who will now be playing the role of conciliation and arbitration. So our budget has to cover all of these areas, and we hope that we'll be able to navigate with the limited resource we got.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Honorable, for the time that you gave us today. We've come to the end of this week's special edition of World of Business, where we were joined by the Honorable Minister of Industry and Commerce, Honorable Mangaliso Ndlovu, who was walking us through some of the key highlights that shaped their ministry in the year 2024, and definitely what to look forward to in the year 2025.